Thank you, Balazs, for the introduction. I am indeed a solutions engineer, which means that I create solutions. And these here are my lovely problem engineers. They create problems. And let me tell you, they do an outstanding job creating problems, because no two of them are ever exactly alike. And on top of that, I realize that sometimes I solve problems they've never had, thanks to my unique ability to completely miss their point. But if you think about it, that's actually the classic model of the dynamics between all users and all solutions providers, who often literally reinvent the wheel as they try to align their solutions with the user's actual needs. But the truth is, no one understands their problems better than those who experience them firsthand. So project managers, linguists, language engineers, they know their own problems better than anyone, and that also makes them the most capable of solving them. So that's why, when it comes to prepackaged, one-size-fits-all AI solutions, we often find ourselves wishing we could tweak these tools. Like when you buy the latest empty service and you just can't make it follow your style guide, although you could easily explain how. Or consider subscribing to a term extraction service that just won't fine-tune to your needs. For instance, you may only want terms coming from a given domain like music, so you want Justin Bieber excluded. Or just think about how ridiculous it is that your TMS will clearly spell out the problems in the QA warnings, but it won't fix them for you. So in all of these cases, you have a clearly defined problem and an inflexible tool that won't adapt to the problem. On top of that, these tools are also mostly single-purpose tools, so you need one for every task. And like I said, no two tasks are ever exactly alike in localization. And these were the reasons why I created PromptLock, which is basically an interface to ChatGPT. I created it mainly for my team. And this allows you to take your ideas, insights, and problems and turn them into a prompt. So you're literally one prompt away from your own DIY solution. Because the great thing about LLM technology, that everyone can at least try to build their own solutions. After all, this can be instructed using human language. So the way it works is it allows you to take an XLIF file, you can craft a prompt, you can put dynamic placeholders into a prompt. These placeholders will then be filled with data and metadata coming from each segment. Then your prompt runs through each segment, and the responses are pulled from your favorite GPT model. And then you can decide where you want to put these responses. You can write into the target field of the XLIF. You can override the source if you want to. You can save it as a comment, or you can export the whole thing as a CSV file. So let's see this in action. We're going to translate some stuff from the Spanish Wikipedia. And this comes from a Word document that has all kinds of formatting tags. So we're going to export the bilingual file. We'll opt for the plain XLIF format. And once we've done that, we are ready to load it into PromptLock. And as you can see, each segment appears in the top left window. Now it's time to write a prompt. This will be a simple one. So basically, we're going to use the target language and the source text as placeholders. We can preview what it looks like for each segment. And if it looks good, it's time to test this prompt. We can test it on a few segments before we run it on the whole thing. and the response appears in the bottom left corner. We can do another test. Let's do segment 2. And if everything looks good, then we are ready to process the whole thing. We can opt to skip the test cases. We can reprocess them. Mind you, this is not real time, so this takes a bit longer depending on the complexity of your prompt. And then you have the responses for every segment. Now, in segment 3, you may be able to spot a problem. Some of the formatting tags were dropped, and so we can refine our prompt and include some instructions on how to handle these placeholders. So if now we reprocess the whole thing, then hopefully we have the placeholders just like we wanted, and now it's time to export the whole thing. This time we're going to write into the xlif target. We'll overwrite our original file and then update the project. And as you can see very soon, we have the translations complete with formatting. Now that's hardly revolutionary, but you know where I'm going with this. So let's try a slightly more complicated task where we will integrate terms. I have created term warnings for the first few segments. For instance, I want grupo to be translated as group. I also want canción to be tune. I'm probably butchering the Spanish, I'm sorry. And I want composiciones to be works. So now I'm exporting the xlif together with these warnings, and I'm going to use these warnings in my prompt. And you can see we have some of the same placeholders we've used earlier, and I also have the QA list placeholder, which will insert the full text of the QA warning into my prompt. And I'm also actually correcting the previous translation, so I'm using the target text placeholder as well. If there's no QA warning, nothing appears in the place designated for it. So let's try again. We'll do a few tests. And indeed, you can see that the word grupo is translated as group. Let's test another one. And canciones becomes tunes in segment 3. Now we can also compare the original text, so you can visualize the changes, so you can see the original word and the one that was replaced. And we can do the whole thing from scratch as well. So if we don't want to correct existing translations, we can opt for translating in a terminologically correct way from scratch, which is what we're doing right now. So I'm going to remove the target text and do the same thing, essentially, from scratch. I can revert all the responses, so I can discard the previous responses from the OpenAI server, and now I should get the same result, or something that's very similar to the previous one, and there it is. Now I can save it into the xlif target. Now, we've seen how we can work with the QA list placeholder, but there are situations where you don't want to handle all warnings at once, because GPTs are better when you use them for a single task rather than multiple tasks simultaneously. So let's tackle the character limit first, which is one of our warnings. Now, also you may not want to include the full text of the placeholder because it's uneconomic. It will complicate your prompt. So I can actually apply regex to the contents of the QA list placeholder. This is a simple one where I will parse out the number. And as you can see in the prompt, only the number appears. And now we should have a shorter translation. Mind you, GPTs are not very good at keeping character limits, but you can see at least it's trying. And it just goes to illustrate how easy it is to use regex to further refine your prompt. Now you can do the same with the terms as well. So let's do that. We are going to use a slightly more complicated regex, regular expression. There it is. And if we've done everything right, the relevant terms will be separated by a tab character, each pair appearing on a new line. So that will make the prompt much prettier than in the previous case. And of course, from here, it's quite straightforward how it works. We'll have the same result as in the previous example. Okay, let's do something else. In real life, it's often required that not all segments be translated in exactly the same way. So I'm going to add a comment. In the first segment, I want to get rid of the pronunciation guide. So I'll insert a comment to that effect. Now in segment 2, I want all numbers in spelling. And in segment 3, I will request a hyper-informal tone. And that's where I can use the comment placeholder. So I'm going to ask for a translation that takes into account the special instructions. And you can see in the preview what it looks like. Let's not forget to add the actual source text as well. And if we are ready, we can process our file. This time we are going to stop after segment 3 because that's how many comments we have. You can always stop this process wherever you want to, and the responses up to that point will be saved. So let's see. In the first translation, we got rid of the pronunciation. In the second segment, we have all the numbers spelled out just like we wanted. And in segment 3, we can see that we have a number of informal phrases like chuck in and also crack on. So we've hit the informal tone that we were aiming for. Now, let's use prompt log to extract terminology. This time I have a system message and a user message. That's not the point. You can see that the format is specified. It's laid out for the GPT. I want the terms separated by an equal sign, and each term pair should be separated by a comma. That's basically what I'm trying to do with this prompt. And I have the existing translations as well, because this is a bilingual term extraction. So let's see what we have for the first sentence. We can see that the terms appear in the right format, exactly as we want it to. But I think we can narrow it down a bit, which is something you may want to do sometimes. So let's specify that we only want to have terms that are related to music. So we'll run this again, and we're left with a single term pair, rock band, which is indeed the only one in this segment that's connected to music. So now if we run it through the whole file, then we'll hopefully only have terms that are related to music. If there's no term, I have a single dash character rather than an empty string, which you can't really get from OpenAI. Right, in segment 3, we have lots of terms, but all of them are related to music. And I have a few in segments 4 and 5. So if I want to create a memoQ resource from this, I can export the whole thing into a CSV table where I will have 3 columns. I'll have the source text, I'll have the target text, and I'll also have my responses, which are essentially the terms or the term pairs. This is what it looks like. And from here, it's quite straightforward how you can convert it into a format that you can later import into memoQ as a resource. You will have to do a couple of string operations, such as you will probably want to replace the commas by new lines and the equal signs by tabs, but you can do that easily. You have to do that outside prompt lock, but that's essentially the idea. Okay, now we can also modify source text. We can do that to alter the tone, correct spelling, convert a script, for instance, from Latin to Cyrillic, and we can modify any other aspect of the text. Here, we will tag things in the source text, and specifically, we will tag semantic concepts or semantic categories that you wouldn't be able to tag otherwise. So you couldn't do this with regex. Okay, I asked for the tagging of place names, and I also specified the format. You can see Liverpool has been tagged in the first segment. Then we have India in segment 3, and so on and so forth. So if we write it into the source this time, and you have to be careful with it because sometimes you may end up with replacements and other modifications that you really didn't want to. So it's a good idea to compare the versions in memoQ. But once you've done that, you can use the regular regex tagger to handle these as inline tags during the translation process. Just don't forget to remove these labels once your translation is ready. And one last thing I want to show you is how you can do QA checks. Now, I talked about numbers and how they appear in all kinds of different formats. I've also thrown in a couple of mistakes into these. I have Roman numerals, I have Arabic numerals, I have spelt out numbers, and I have the mistakes. I want to check all of those. Now, that's impossible with regex QA, so we'll try to do that with prompt lock. And of course, I'm going to write a prompt where I'll ask GPT to compare all dates and numbers regardless of their format. Obviously, I'll include the source text, again, the target text. I'll specify what I want to see for correct correspondences. So it's a good idea to limit the options. And for segment 1, we get the response correct, even though one of the numbers is in spelling, the other one is in digits. In segment 2, we have loads of numbers and in different formats as well. And you have a long list of what it found. Long story short, it found all the mistakes and all the correct correspondences, regardless of the format. And so once we have the results of our QA check, we can write it into the comment field of the XLIF. And so our vendors or our project managers can continue to work with these issues. So they appear just like other comments. So, since the beginning of the year, when we implemented prompt lock, it has significantly enhanced our productivity. We've generated almost 1 million words, 1 million tokens, and achieved a post-editing efficiency that's 1.8 times greater compared to vanilla DeepL. We've supported more than 20 different task types, some of which you can see on the screen. So we've improved the quality of our MT by applying terminology, fuzzy matches, custom instructions, style guides, and whatnot. We've also automated document preparation, such as segment-level language detection, transliteration, term extraction, bilingual or monolingual, and we also tagged a lot of semantic content. Additionally, we've also made complex QA checks possible. So we've unified formats for dates, numbers, and other strings, such as UI strings, and we also tried and successfully identified missing or extra information in segments. So before I open up for QA, I know at least some of you will have one question: how can I try this? And the answer is that while using PromptLock was originally developed as an in-house tool, we recognize its potential value for other users of memoQ. We're also not a software development company, so we've opted for a rather unconventional approach compared to traditional licensing. Our goal is to create a community around this where we can share prompts, experiences, applications, and more. And if you're interested, you can step up to a booth in the lobby. You can email me, or you can message me on Hoover. And with that, I think it's time for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marty. That's hearing it for the third time. That was just as impressive as for the first time. And you were very economic with the time, so we have time for questions. And I see Gergő, and then Stefan, and then... So that's our order.
Just a quick question. First of all, it's extremely impressive, so congratulations. The question is this all your work? So it's a one-man team relying on the input of the production team in Edimart, or is it anybody else?
Yeah, this has been a one-man show.